There we go. So this is starting our fifth year in this building, and our second year with our greenhouse. The school used to be south of town, just a little bit, and we bought this property up here, built the ag room, and now we've school, and already we're building on, as you can see, construction out there. Don't know a lot of the faces in here, and I thought I'd be the oldest guy by a long ways, but thank God Kenny and Bruce and Cleaver are here. So I'm not. But so anyway, we're going to get started. Hopefully you'll have some questions at the end. We can just kind of talk and maybe, fire out some questions amongst all of us. I know a lot of you have trained a lot of CDE teams and been very successful. This is just the way I kind of do it here, and I'm open for ideas, suggestions from you as well. Did a little handout where you can maybe take some notes, and we'll kind of get started. Recruitment, to me, is the most important part of the CDE process, and that doesn't mean the first 4 students that walk into the class or start texting kids that, hey, I want to go to the big 3 and suck on popsicles, up there. That means, laying the groundwork and finding out some students that might work in a CDE team. And I break that down into 2 deals. The new guy that's just starting out at a program, maybe some of you in here are just starting out your first or second year, and then the old guy that's been there for quite a little while decides maybe they want to start a team, or maybe you've been there 5 years and think, hell, CDEs maybe are the way to go now. And so the new guy, my experiences that I've had, and this is the 22nd year I've been here at Tuttle, and 32nd I've taught, so it's been a while since I've been the new guy. But when I always tried to accommodate the ones that are the juniors or the seniors, because they think they want to judge, and most of them think they want to judge livestock. Everybody thinks we can judge livestock, and they don't want to put in the effort or the work when they're a junior or senior. It just seems like by the time they have their driver's license, if they don't have reasons format figured out, meats cuts figured out, IDs on weeds and seeds figured out, then they're not going to ever. Now, there is an exception to that rule, but I guess what I'm saying is if you're a new guy, you're going to have to deal with those juniors and seniors, because those mamas and daddies are going to want them to try with a new person in there. But I like to get a younger set established and started. And if I figure out that the new guys, or that the older folks maybe have some bad habits, I do my best to try to separate the younger students from the ones that have the bad habits that maybe don't want to do the things, because the bad apples will mess up the ones that are the younger ones. And so try to take them to a different contest, maybe try to take them to a contest that they aren't going to. Take the new ones to the young ones to an overnight contest, and the new ones that aren't working as well, maybe they just get to go on a day trip, that kind of thing. So I think you got to separate that recruitment out into 2 separate things, 2 separate mindsets, in my opinion. Like I said, if you're the new guy just coming in there and you don't have anything to do with a junior or a senior, you're probably going to have some issues with your administration and your parents as well if you just look the other way. It's just very difficult, especially if it comes down to meats judging or livestock judging, for them to end up making it, and if they just started out, though. That's just the plain and simple of it. So on the recruitment, I start with the middle school admin. Our principal, that's a middle school teacher, her son was on the national livestock judging team that won nationals. Smart kid, never been on a farm at all, but was a smart kid. Several of the teachers that I've got here in the high school that have kids that are sharp, that I have a relationship with, I've used some of those students and their buddies. If it's a teacher's kid that comes out here as an 8th or 9th grader, they probably got a friend that maybe didn't take ag, and so we get them established, and we're like, hey, you got a buddy that makes a 4.0, or has got close to straight A's. Then that's what we kind of look at there for recruitment. Brothers and sisters of students that show, obviously, are some of the first ones that you want to look at in 4-H. We're lucky with meats and livestock that we can judge some kids in 4-H. We can't do that with AgCom or those kind of things, but you can with livestock and meats. Get them started as a 7th or 8th grader and then transfer them over into FFA. I think that's a good policy. Now, Oklahoma FFA has done all we can do to hurt that process because we're one of the few states around that won't allow you to judge somebody at a national 4-H contest and then judge them at a national FFA contest. Texas, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, all the ones we're trying to beat all get to do that. Oklahoma doesn't. So there's a limit to what you can do. We've tried to pass that through the CDE committee several times, and it gets to the state office, and there's like no go on that. But they talked about it being due to shooting sports and that kind of thing. But anyway, that's a different topic. So I talked to the coaches as well, the counselors. The counselor, my middle school counselor and the high school counselor are very good resource people that can tell you who the good kid is in 7th grade that's fixing to come in 8th grade. So spend a little time and go down this summer and say, hey, who's a good 7th grade kid? Pull that enrollment form and look and see if they've even put ag on there as an elective. And if they have, make sure that they get in ag, okay? Some of them, they only need a hook, just put in a little bit and they'll get that hook sucked in there real deep. The coaches, I primarily try to talk to the basketball coach because I've found over the years basketball is the least thing that butts heads with the CDEs. It starts after, in October, November, and it's over, by spring break. If you're in the state tournament, it's over by spring break. And so you don't have to worry about those kids being, bumping heads at all. When you get into baseball, into golf, into slow pitch softball, then we got issues. And those have to be addressed. Meet with the parents. I think that's an important thing to do if you're going to have students that judge for you. And maybe you can't meet with them face to face. Send them an email. Send them some sort of, make a call to them. Some of them may not want to come to a parent-teacher conference. I see them at possibly the back-to-school party that we have. We have a Halloween party. We have a Christmas party here. And by that time, I've had opportunity to, usually the ones that you've got identified, you're going to probably meet by then. And so talk to them about it. Say, hey, really, here's what we got. Your kid can get a scholarship in some of these things. There's money to be involved. There's competition. They can get up on their feet and talk in front of a crowd, that sort of thing. And so sell that to the parent. And at that point, kind of give them some of the expectations that they need to have. If you talk to them, because when you talk to that 8th grader, especially in that 8th grade class, they're going to get home with about 10% of what you told them. Just enough to make that parent totally confused about what the heck's going on. We put a little deal in our syllabus about, official dress is required at functions, and that got construed even with parents into that, my gosh, that teacher's going to make them all buy official dress. Why in the world? And they were calling the principal about it. And so there gets to be a little confusion when you're dealing with, channels. And so I like to talk to them one-on-one, especially the ones that I think, that kid's good. I know that kid can make it a judger. I need to talk to the parent real quick. So that's an important thing. Clear expectations up front, I think, are important to the parent and to the student. I mean, if you really want to do this, here's what is going to happen. And that's the first time that I get the calendar out to them. I try to have all of the dates available for them at that point. And when I talk to that parent, if I've got those dates, I like to give it to them too. I don't like sending it, Google is great, Google Forms is great, Google Drive is great. That refrigerator that's in that kitchen is the best place for a calendar because we go in there every day and get in that fridge That Google Drive is not sitting up there on that fridge for us to look at. And so I give them a paper copy of the calendar, and they take that sucker home, okay? And then I make sure, try to follow up with the parent, do you have a copy of this calendar? And I mean, we can still share it with them, but I like for them to have the clear expectations. Practice-wise, it's a must. I mean, I kind of giggled about the big three a little bit to start, but I mean, it's full. Some of them kids will come up there and have no clue how to even mark a card, because that's the first time they've ever come to a judging contest. They're just wanting to suck on a popsicle. That's all they're wanting to do, and talk to their buddies. They're not going to fully buy in to a judging team or any kind of a career development or LDE unless you have invested as much time as they have. You've got to make sure, if it is important to you, then somebody in your chapter, it will be important to them as well. So they have to know that you have invested in it as well. Now there's the exception. You're going to have some kids that are going to want to do it regardless. I mean, they're going to want to go. They're going to want to figure it out. They'll figure it out on their own in some instances. But by and large, you've got to have at least one or two that you've got to help along. I mean, everybody agree to that? I mean, I think that's the case. I try to practice in the mornings, especially again as you get students that are older. They try to they do get jobs. Things come up. You've got athletics, and so I'm lucky here that the administration lets me have. We're on a block schedule, and so in the spring, my first hour is my judging class that I have. I've got every kid that's an officer that gives a speech that's on the judging team, except the kids that are in band, because band is the same hour, so I have to make a little adjustment there. But we come in before school, and depending on their level that they're at, I mean, I get 85 minutes with them in a row, and so that's a pretty good amount of time. If it's young kids that's just starting out, working on reasons or ID cuts or whatnot, I mean, we've come in at 7 before. And then if they start getting to be a little bit late, we'll back it up to 6:50. And then there's, we'll be here. And then when we go back to 7. So that gives me from 7 to almost 9:30. Now, do I do it every day? No, we try to back and forth it a little bit. But it seems like it's easier to do in the morning. Now, do you have to get up earlier? You definitely do. But there's so many. That's the complaint I hear from so many teachers is I can't get them together and they don't want to practice, and that's why I say start with them young ones, because when you're an 8th grader or a 9th grader, you still got that, you're fired up about life at that point. You want to get up. If that ag teacher's telling you you're going to get to go to spend a night in McAllister and judge at Eastern Oklahoma State College the next day, and eat at Pete's place, they're going to be ready to roll. And they're going to come in here at 7, 1 or 2 days a week. The older ones may not. And that's a good way of sorting them. If they don't come to practice and they don't get to go, keep you a log sheet of the practices. And if they don't show up, or if they're 20 minutes late or 30 minutes late, write it down. Make you a little log. I got that Jostens calendar in there on my desk, and I make a little notes of who shows up and who doesn't show up. And then when Johnny doesn't get to go to the contest because he's late several times, you just show Mama. He can't come. He can't show up. He can't give a set of reasons. He can't even get through his top pair. So he can't come. And so that's a way to reinforce your deal, is to just make sure that they're there. But I like morning practices. We practice some at lunch with 8th and 9th graders when we talk about opening ceremonies. We do that some there because we have some classes that we don't have them all together and that kind of thing. And we practice at lunch. Very little practice after school. I mean, we do some, but not very much. It's just too hard to get them all together, and we just got too much stuff going on at one time. So start with more than you need. If you're going to try, I keep talking about livestock judging. Not everybody needs to coach a livestock judging team, but if you've got agronomy team, right back here. I think you got one of them, don't you, Mr. Shaw? Or you had, well, Mr. Bradshaw had one. Okay. If you got whatever team, start out with 6 at least, because you're going to have them quit. I guarantee you, they'll quit on you in a heartbeat. I can tell when they walk in that door and say, "Can I talk to you a minute?" I know what's going to happen. Before they get the door shut, I'm like, "So you're going to quit today? How did you know that?" I've done this a year or two. I know what's happening, okay? So they're going to end up quitting. And some of them you're going to want to quit, and some of them you're going to be like, "Dadgummit, I wish they wouldn't have quit." So start out with more than you need. Now, you may not be able to. You might have to, if you can only get 4, if you're at a real small school and can only get 4, you're going to have to handle them with kid gloves a little bit. The good thing about being able to start out with 6 or 7 is they're competitive. You know, when they're all going to want to make the team, or they're all going to want to travel. And I tell them up front, if all 6 of you are good, then you'll all go. You'll all travel with me. If you're not, you know, if you're not shooting at, you know, 170 on your ID by the time we get to April, then you're not going. And so they'll give them a little carrot to dangle at. So anyway, start with more than you need. Be flexible to keep them around. As an 8th grader, a 9th grader, you can be kind of flexible with different things. You just kind of play that by ear a little bit. Usually as an 8th grader or a 9th grader, they think they want to take track. Got to be track. Got to be in that track deal. The reason they're wanting to be in track is because they go out to the track and there's 50 of them out there, and they can get away with not having to do anything out there. And in off season, our football coaches got them, or our basketball coaches got them, and they work them until their ankles are smoking. And so they're in track, but they're not fully committed. Now we got a guy back there that's got one that was fully committed, right, JJ? I mean, yours was, which I get. There are some of them that are that way, but when it comes down to it, if we start getting pretty good, we start doing this thing, and by, you know, mid-March, we're scoring good, we're having a little bit of success, they're not going to go to that track meet. But even if they do, as an 8th grader, they go this week, and then next week they're with me, and they have a good time. We've spent the night, we've went over this contest. We're like, "Hey, I've met some people from wherever, you know, out here, Chandler, Oklahoma. I met them, and there's a good old boy from Chandler, and we learned about this and learned about that." They're going to probably pick it up. Now, if a sophomore that I've worked on and sent to camp and all this wants to cut me on a track meet that we've talked about, then I might have a little bit of problem with that. And so you got to be a little bit flexible about things when it comes to springtime, because track and baseball are important, you know, to some students. Golf is another one that gets those 8th and 9th graders. They haven't figured out that they're not an athlete yet as an 8th and 9th grader. The dough-bellied kid still thinks he can run the fastest. It's just something happens between that 8th and 9th grade year that they're like, you know, I'm not Michael Jordan. And then the 9th and 10th grade year especially. They might play 9th grade football, and then they're like, "Man, this is not for me, okay? I want to do something else." And so that's why you got to be a little flexible on that. We got any questions before I keep going? I'm afraid I'm going to get done too quick. Anything else? All right. Next thing. Be flexible to change students from team to team. I mean, Middlestat's got the 8th graders. And so I'll ask him, I'll say, "Hey, you got anybody in there you think might make a judger?" And he'll say, "Yeah, this one. So I'll go in there and talk to him. And they all know what livestock judging is, because their dad might have marked a card somewhere one day when he was in high school or something at Murray State College or something, you know. And so you'll go in there and you'll say, "How many want to be a livestock judge?" There are 15 of them raise their hand, you know. Well, there's not but maybe 1 or 2 that might could do it. How many want to be a meats judger? Well, what's that? You know? And so you have to kind of be around them a little bit to figure out, and you guys have taught a lot, know, you can tell which ones are going to be the the ones that are going to be on a certain team typically, just by how they act, how smart they are, their work habits, their penmanship that they've got, the way they write stuff. I can watch them when we go to the fair barn to clean up, and the ones that are leaning on a broom, I don't want. The ones that are throwing dust everywhere are the ones that I want on my judging team. And so, I mean, they'll start out. I guess what I'm saying is I'll have 10 of them that'll want to start livestock judging, and within 3 days, I can figure out which ones need to quickly switch over to meats or land or whatever from there. You just need to be able to massage that deal and talk to them about the possibility of them switching over. And if you got a 4-H student that's showed livestock before, and mom or dad are at all involved, that's the first thing that they're going to want them to do is judge livestock. And so I try to start massaging that deal early and saying, hey, this meats deal is pretty good. Or, if that kid's real timid and shy and maybe doesn't talk as well in front of other people, and they're going to have to end up being a meats judger or a land judger or AgCom or food science or something that you're not standing up, talking in front of somebody, extemporaneously. Find someone to help that's smarter than you are. Well, resource people. I've done it forever. John Derek Mitchell will tell you this story. I had 4 good kids that had been on state winning teams that didn't really fit on the other teams that I was teaching, and they wanted to do milk quality and products. I had no clue about milk quality and products, but I knew by the spring I needed to be good at it. And was he telling stories about me yesterday? Yeah. That sucker. Y'all probably already heard this. So I get with him. I tell him, I said, hey, I want to do this. I want to try to do it. I said, can you help me with these milks? He's like, sure. So he gave me a lot more than I wanted, less than I needed probably. But I got my little yellow pad out here, and I wrote down everything about whatever the kind of milk that I needed to have. And that contest cost us more than a livestock judging or meats ever thought about costing, the amount of milk and cheese that we bought in that one year. But he helped me. I'll help you too. All you got to do is call or email me. And there's guys out here that'll do the same thing that are running around here that aren't here today. That'll help you to train just whatever you want to do, any aspect of it. If you want help, just pick the phone up or email or whatever. But find a resource person. When I started the meets, Mike Stevens at Chickasha told me I needed to do it, and Mr. Scott at Ampo had done it a little bit, but he quit doing it. And I got some cards from him that a kid had drawn, ribeyes that he had drawn with a pencil. I mean, good-looking ribeyes that he'd drawn on these cards. And that's what we started with, is those. We didn't have all these online subscriptions or anything like that. I mean, we had VCR tapes back in the day, and then I would hit that VCR and hit pause, and that picture would, do that. And I'm trying to chew on them, and they're like, their heads are doing this because they, and so it's so much better now. But those are the guys that I leaned on, was them. But I think the resource person is the minor part of it. Getting the team established, picking out the right kid to do it is the big deal, and some of them's not going to have any parental support. I got one on my team that just won state and meets that's not got any parental support. Now her name's not Taylor McGill. She's got a little bit of support, but I got one on there that's got none, and I just have to have that mindset with her that she doesn't have any. You need to know what the parental support is of the student. It's better, you can do it either way, but it's better if you got that support. But you just got to know ahead, this girl's going to need a little money, or I got to work to where I got her this day because she's got to work this day, and that kind of thing. Where's the young lady from Holdenville? Gerald Roberts and Dale Turner. I mean, you may know those guys anymore from in here. Anybody? Our racer, I mean, they're the best. They were the best. They taught me and Big Bob when we went out student teaching all kinds of stuff about, training teams, that kind of thing. I learned from them, and then when I call your person, if you've had a good relationship with them when you were student teaching, call that person back and say, hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? Obviously if you took it in the spring, you didn't have them in the fall. So what'd you do in the fall to work to get ready in the spring doing this? So break the contest down into pieces. That's one of the first things we do. And so I'll take meets judging, for example. I've got some little books that I got from onelessthing.net. They're a little small book about this big. It's got every meat cut in it, every single one of them. And so that book is small enough they can carry it in their backpack or whatever, purse, whatever they need to do. There's also online versions of the meat cuts. And so I'll pull up those websites and we start looking at online cuts, and I give them that book. I said, this is your book. And what we're trying to do is build confidence in them. Well, in meats, me and Kreiner put on every contest in the state except the state contest, and Eastern is the only two we don't do. Well, we do it, and the state does it. You're going to have 10 beef, you're going to have 10 pork, you're going to have 10 lamb. How many lamb cuts are there? 22? 22 lamb cuts. 10 of them are going to be on the contest. That's 1/3 of your ID score. If you can get the lamb cuts down, you're going to be 1/3 there. And that's one of the ways that I teach the students, or I look in my brain and I figure out, is this kid going to be a hard worker? Because lamb cuts are so simple to memorize because they're so diverse. The color, just the way they're cut, the way they look, the size. If they can't get those lamb cuts down in 5 days, is that too long? I mean, 5 days, they're not going to be able to, they're not going to be somebody that's a hard worker, okay? Now, can they get the cookery down? Can they get the primal down? All that kind of thing? Who knows? But they should have some kind of a basis of it in 5 days. But I even break it down more than that, because when you have your cuts, you got your species, your primal, and your retail. And so what I do is I give them a primal cut. I'll say, okay, you guys, here's these primals. There's about 5 cuts in 2 primals of lamb. I'll say, take these 5 cuts and come back tomorrow and we're going to quiz on them. Well, as an 8th grader or a 9th grader, they're fired up about life. They're ready to do it. I mean, I'll show them that website and they're like, and they can put it right in their phone. They'll have it in no time. But and at the end, right before they leave the class, I'll say, hey, and if you want to work ahead a little bit, you can. Here's these other ones. And 9 times out of 10, the kids that end up being state winners for me have more than they want to have the next day when they come in there. They got 18 of the 22 memorized by the next day. And I just know, here's my one that's going to be on this team. Here's the one that's going to be on this team. And that kid that comes rolling in, I left that book at home. That mom she forgot to tell me to bring it, to school. I'm like, really? Mom forgot to tell you to bring it? Okay? And so I know at that point, within 4 or 5 days, who's going to be doing what. Livestock judging, I got a little set of reasons. It's small. The opening statement's 1 sentence. The top pair is 2 sentences. They never judge a class until they are at least through the opening statement and the top pair. They got to be through it before we ever start. Now, Middlestad will let him, he'll go in there and he'll pull up a hog class or a cattle class or a sheep class. But I never approach them about anything about, breaking down a class or anything like that until they have memorized that opening statement and top pair. I guarantee it's less than that first paragraph of that. They got to have it down. They got to talk. They got to be able to talk reasons when they go. And so I know at that point, if they're pretty sharp, they just don't want to stand up in front of me and give it in there in the office, then I know at that point, I can kind of tell if they're still a good kid. At that point, we're going to move to land, or we're going to move to meats, or at some point there. So I try to make that transition fairly quickly at that point. Oh,
Now, is that something you do while you're practicing with those kids, or is that something you do while you're in class?
so I'm lucky, like I said, to have first hour in the spring. We're on block schedule, and so I lose them. I lose a set in the fall. I get a set in the spring. First hour is my judging class, and so I bring them in, and that's what we work on in class every day. I got kids in the supply room working on something, some in here, some out in the shop. I got some that like to talk reasons in the greenhouse or work on them in the greenhouse. So I got them everywhere. So I work on it in here quite a bit. Now, like I said, the band butts up head to head with first hour judging class. And so I got some of them that have to be in their second hour, just a couple. And so they're in here in my horticulture class. They're not knotheads, or they don't come in here in my hort class. And they're working on their own, but I try to set up through email, through Google Classroom. It takes a little bit of planning, but you'll have, you give them that class in Google Classroom. ICEV works good for meets because you can pop one on there, or you can put an internet site on there from different things, and they can come in. And if it's just a couple of kids, and one of them's usually at my desk, and another one's popping a laptop out of there and is in the supply room. And so I got a bunch in my hort class, and so that's what they do. Yeah. That's what that is. And then I've got 8th grade. If it's an 8th grade student, 8th grade ag is second hour. They've been really good here to let us have the 8th graders that we want both semesters. We've been able to get them. And so if we identify 8th graders in here that are pretty good, and we figure out that they need to be in ag in the spring, then we'll make sure that they take ag in the spring. And that's another thing that we do, being on the block, is I go down there and talk to her, and all the ones that are the cream, we try to have in the fall, and then we figure out if they can take it in the spring as well. So the only bad thing about that is we get really busy in the spring, and then that means that all the ones that are the second teamers and the 8th grade are down here in our way. They're not in our way, but they're just not as, they're not the ones that you'd like to have sometimes. We haven't had any problem with discipline as much, but if you're going to have some, that would be the crew that we would have it on, because there's so many of them. We get 25 or 30 in that class, and it's a little bit large. Let them have success early. Try to find a contest you can go to that they can win something, or do it locally. Have a FFA hat or a T-shirt that you can give them, or buy them a Sonic gift card. Lay out 15 ID cuts, or have one of your older members, or yourself if you have to, or we're lucky that Middlestat's here. Talk a set of reasons to them, and the winner wins that set of reasons, or record them and send it to somebody and say, figure out who that best set is, and give them a Sonic gift card early. That will get them fired up to try to do something. You got to build momentum on them. And if you go to, it happens in the livestock show too. How many of them think, December 1, when they get that hog bled, I have got the Burke that's going to win Oklahoma City. And then after they didn't feed him about 3 times after Christmas, it's Christmas Day, I don't need to go feed that pig. Then he sucks. Okay. When it's early, give them success, because if they go to that show in December and win, they're going to brush that sucker like like he's shiny as a new penny. So that's what we try to do, is just give them some kind. You got to find somewhere where you can go, where you can hang a plaque or a banner on the wall. Take your picture, put it in the paper, put it on the school Facebook page. Have the principal, call it out over in the school, in their announcements. That needs to be called out. And we got to get that done. That's my suggestion there. Keep bringing up the calendar. The calendar is important. If you don't have a calendar of events for spring, you are a lost duck. Okay? You got to. Prom, number 1. When I'm interviewing for a job, and I haven't done it in 22 years, but if the prom's on state contest, see ya. Wouldn't want to be you. Okay? I'm not teaching there, okay? Because it's a killer. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you make it with the prom being on. It'd be rough. State testing, you got to have a relationship with that counselor. If they tell you them kids have to be there, they are lying through their teeth, okay? They don't. They do not have to be there. Now, is the principal or the counselor that was a coach that thinks, by God, I need this one here, because if it's a good judging team, they're going to all be on honor roll, right? They're going to have a good grade. They don't have to be there. They want them there because that score is going to be higher if they're there. There's two things. They can retake. There is a retake day. They all got a retake day, okay? Now, the ACT doesn't. If they miss that ACT as a junior, that's a little tough. But they got 19 times to take it before they graduate. Okay, so state testing is important. They're going to buffalo you on that one. Baseball and track is critical. It's tough. I've lost some good kids that have been in baseball and track, but it's tough for them to do both. I mean, it is very difficult for them to do both. Speech contests, you better have you some help from your parents. Okay, you better have you some help from your parents. I mean, I've more than one time, Middlestad or a parent has met me or taken them at Connors and left Connors to go to Garber or Shawnee or Tecumseh or wherever for a speech contest. And so it gets really busy in the spring. So, and that's another thing, to have good kids that are quality kids. Too many days. Gonna miss too many days. Yep, got too many days to miss. Well, we're lucky because we're off on Fridays after spring break. Every Friday till school's out, we're off, and so that gets us a lot of help. But the good kids are going to get their work done. Okay, 10 days doesn't mean. I mean, that deal is flexible. It's very flexible. It's again what your administration or your school tells you that the way they identify it or the way they define it. You can miss if you want to. I've never had a kid that's had too many days where they couldn't go, and I mean we've missed a bunch of days here, and we're on block. It's even worse because if you miss one day, it's like missing two on the regular. But it's not that hard to get those extra days to call something. I mean, I told Mr. Coker back in the day. You guys probably know him. He taught forever. He's older than Bruce is. Did y'all graduate together? Yeah. He was the best guy, the best principal or superintendent a guy could ever have, and this was back 15 years ago when the 10-day was a little bit more strict. I told him, I said, I'll just not go to Colt Conference. I said, we'll just do something else. I said, it's not competitive. He's like, we'll count that one. He said, that's qualifying. And so they can do whatever they want to at the local on that. But the schedule, plan your schedule out for March and April. The hotels, my wife told me I had to bring this up. You guys are familiar with Hilton Honors or IHG points? If you're not, you need to be, okay? You can get your vacations paid for in the summertime by points on those things. If you'll sign up to be a member of an IHG or Honors Club, get those hotel rooms now, okay? I already got them for Tulsa, and they were cheap. They're fixing to go through the roof at Tulsa because there's not that very many hotels up there for convention. Get those things planned out. Tell those parents where you're going to be going, especially as they're 8th and 9th graders. If you're starting to start out a new program, a new judging program or CDE program, they're going to be a little bit reluctant. They might want to go with you, and if you're planned out ahead, they're going to be a lot more, able to send their young kid with you. That might be the first time they've ever spent the night overnight, an 8th grader, is with you. So they may want to go too. Judging card is critical. I always get a running PO for judging card at the beginning of the year. Now, you may not be able to get a running PO at your school, but judging card's awesome. Those kids they'll get on that freaking phone as soon as we get in the ag truck. Well, I wonder what Rock Creek talked on that set of bulls. I mean, I lit that deal up, they get to looking on there. They'll see. Judging card's the best. I mean, you can get on there and check all that stuff out. You know where stuff is. Kids will put that on their favorites on their phone, and they'll be able to look and see what contest is because it's on judging card. Your admin, I don't know what to tell you about your admin. We had 2 years of the principal that was rough. But the rest of the time that I've been here, I mean, the one before him was the president of this chapter. He was great. His kids all were in ag, state speech contest type girls. The one we got now is super. He's our old wrestling coach, and so he'll let me do kind of what I need to do. It hurts if you don't have a good administration. Is it a non-doer? Is it a no-goer? No. It just depends on how much you want it, how bad you want it. It's going to make that hurdle a little bit higher to jump over if you don't have a good admin. But you need to have a good admin. Parent sponsors, I don't like taking a bunch of different ones. Try to get you one that doesn't want to be a kid again, that will keep them in their room, that won't say, well, we'll see if we can get him to do it, okay? We won't go to Walmart. He wouldn't let us do it, but we'll get Miss whoever, to let us go. Pick a good sponsor when you get when you get ready to go these overnight trips. It'll save you lots of heartache. The ones that say, we've got to check with him. That's what you do on that, I think, in my opinion. I like taking female sponsors, sticking them in the rooms with the girls. Sometimes most of the time I don't take a male sponsor, but I try to take female sponsors, and then I have student teachers that go as well. Be prepared. Online subscriptions are important. The meats and the livestock, the horse judging, all have really good online subscriptions. The very best one, I can't tell you what the best one is on livestock. They're all pretty darn good. JudgingPro.com, Judge to Win, they're both good. And they got meat stuff on there as well that they've started doing. LivestockJudging.com has started putting a lot of good meat stuff on there. There's not as many online things for food science or AgCom, that sort of thing, but there are some. I mean, there's some pictures that you can find. Okay. Make practice worthwhile. Be ready for practice when the students roll in there. Don't come in, if you're practicing at 7:30, don't get here at 7:29 and start trying to stumble around and find a practice class or set cuts up or that kind of thing. Be ready for them. They're going to know. They're going to be able to read right through you and figure out if you're not ready. Use contest review as a teaching tool. The worst thing you can do, and I hate that Rusty has to do this at the Big Three, but he gives us like 8 minutes to judge all those classes when they're over with. And then he starts calling out the officials. Well, if a kid's missed a class, what's the first thing he's going to do? What's he going to do if he's messed up the class? Oh, I'm screwed. And then he turns his brain off. He won't listen to you the rest of the time. And the best thing that you can do is if he misses a class, that's a teaching moment right there. It needs to be a teaching moment. And so at all these interscholastics like NEO, we'll go through NEO, Eastern, Connors. You can go through that contest and talk about each animal, and they're just dying to find out what that placing is. And then at the end, we give them the placing. On the meats deal, I mean, I like to be able to go through there and talk about each retail ID. And if they've messed up or switched to or something like that, they get so mad at themselves. Use all of them as a teaching tool. Don't see how quick you can get in that truck and get to wherever, to Eskimo Joe's to eat, okay? We're wanting to try to make it a teachable moment. And then the last thing I tell you is, how bad do you want it? First thing I hear always, I can't get students motivated. The reason you can't get them motivated is probably because you're not motivated to do it, okay? It's hard to get those older ones, like I said in the very beginning, to do it. Start with them younger ones. They are going to be motivated. It's your job to keep them motivated. I don't have time. Bull, butter. I'm as busy as anybody. That greenhouse, the shop. We're all busy. We just have to make time. Is it a priority? Okay? And I can look at that. You guys there that first session that night on Tuesday night at convention? You can see how many people weren't motivated by the amount of people that weren't there. And to hear a good state president give his retiring address, and you could hear the freaking crickets in that Cox Center at Chesapeake up there. that's where we're at on some of this stuff right now. I don't know what I'm doing. If you don't know what you're doing, ask somebody. That first meets team I had, I learned it with the kids. We had a little contest every day. We'd come back in here, and I'd have a primal, try to have it memorized, and they'd try to have it memorized. They did it a whole lot quicker than I did, especially on that stupid cookery. I hate that stuff. Questions? I only got a couple minutes left. I didn't think I'd last that long. Anybody got questions at all? Well, hopefully, anytime you need me, call or email.
On your first hour class that you have, you call it your judging class, so I know you got meats, livestock, probably a few different teams. So on like Mondays, are you practicing livestock and alternating them by days, or
No.
just doing it all?
In the class, it's everybody's going at the same time. Now, what I try to do is just have it fixed to where I start out the class, and then by the end of the hour, toward the end of the hour, I'm listening to reasons in the office, and my meats judges are working on something, the land judges are doing something, that kind of thing. So it's everything every day. Now, in the morning, we might come in, meats might come in 2 days a week, livestock might come in these other two.
Where it's
That's
specific to them before you start?
yes. Yeah, it's a whole lot easier, especially if they'll just come 5 minutes before.
Is that judging class, which sounds like great help, but when they transcript it, does each kid have it transcripted for a specific ag class? Because, you do your state degree, they're gonna have to.
Yep, 1 year it's animal science, the next year it might be livestock production, the next year it might be natural resources. We change the name of it every year. Now, some of you might frown on that. They're learning more doing that than they are sitting here watching Netflix. Okay? We're learning something every day in livestock judging or meats judging, whatever. Okay? They are learning something in that class.
Also, you touched on it, on that block schedule, but there's gonna be some good kids that you use that you aren't able to get in the spring. Now, I know you said you tried to get the cream in the spring, but what do you do when you can't?
So I look at that schedules in the summertime, and I make sure that all my kids are in my judging class in the spring, so they got ag at least 1 hour. With what we've done over here, we had about almost 200 kids between the junior and the senior class that took concurrent. If they take concurrent, then they get it helps too though. It kills you and it helps you. It helps you if you'll plan with them and make sure they start doing it as a junior. Then they got more classes they can take. They got more ability to come. And some of them, I had one of my meats judges this time. She wasn't enrolled in an ag class in both semesters, but she did her and all of those classes are online. She just came up here because it hurt her grade point. If she took that extra class, it would add another 4 point in there, and well, 5.0 classes are honors classes, and so for valedictorian it screws everything out. It's a long story, but yeah. So you got to plan. You got to plan in the summertime on block, big time, to get them. It's a little tough. Any other questions at all? If y'all hadn't seen the greenhouse, it's out here just east. It's a work.